Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we're going to be doing our first Combine review video going over day one where we had defensive tackles, edge rushers, and linebackers testing. So I want to go through this. I want to talk about some players I feel like stood out. Not going to go through necessarily everyone, but we're going to talk about the ones I thought were definitely interesting for this. Now, I want to go ahead, before I start this, go ahead and let you know, rankings on here are not updated. I'm not going to do that until the Combine is over, because otherwise we're just going to see, a ton of edge rushers fly up the board day one. And then it might be cornerbacks, and then it'll be receivers. I want to do everything at once so I can properly evaluate everyone. I don't have, recency bias as much. So whenever we look at this, if I throw it out there, it's going to be just as it is right now until the Combine ends. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump into this, and we have to start with the top guy of the day. Probably the one who stood out the most for where his draft stock was to start and where it is now, and that's Braden Fisk. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. My evaluation of him was not that good. I have not got to look into him a ton because there's a lot of players to look into in a very limited amount of time. My first amount of film I watched, I didn't really like that much. But I've understood a lot of people are big on him, thought he's a really good player. My issues probably more with the measurables, and I didn't think the film was as good. But man, this guy at the Combine absolutely dominated. He led basically every single drill except for the 10-yard split. And all that does to show you is this guy's got the best long speed. And you look here, Mekhi Wingo, 1.64. That's blazing fast. He blew everyone out of the water. Fisk was just behind. And at the end of the day, he ran significantly faster. I mean, this is almost a tenth of a second faster. And the greatest part of it was him crossing the finish line, doing his best Kool-Aid impression with the, oh yeah, and all that. That was pretty funny. But it was fun to watch him. He was definitely the guy who stood out the most from the defensive tackle class, and he went up against some pretty big names as well in doing that. So really impressed with that. I think the athletic upside for Braden Fisk is going to make up for a lot of what you're missing with things like arm length. So I really like what I saw. Definitely someone I'm going to have to look back at. I'm not going to show you him on my big board just for the sake of not getting roasted for having him maybe a little later than he should be. So let's go to the next guy. And I actually can't show him on here because he did not test. But I want to show you measurables at defensive tackle for this guy. It's my fourth-rated prospect on the interior. It's maybe a bit high, but Michael Hall Jr. He did not test because I believe he has a hamstring injury. But where I think he won was in the measurables. Because I was getting told by a lot of people before the Combine that this guy is not tall enough. He doesn't have the arm length. He's got a smaller frame, or it's average, and he's so far behind on weight, right? He's supposed to be like 280 pounds. Well, he comes into the Combine weighing 290. Well, you got guys like Chris Jenkins, under 300, Byron Murphy, under 300. It's less than 10 pounds difference, right? And so teams are going to look at the pass rush arsenal that Michael Hall already has coming into the league. He's got a lot of moves he can throw at people. He was really impressive at the Senior Bowl, someone who stood out to me a ton. But you look at what the ceiling is too, based on some measurements. I mean, he's just under 6'3", right? But same size as Chris Jenkins. Chris Jenkins is looked at as probably a pretty good defensive tackle in this class. I mean, I at least see him that way, and I think most people do. Hand size, one of the biggest that you got, 10 inches. That's pretty freaking big. So, I mean, you got a couple other guys up there, like Dwayne Carter, McKinley Jackson, T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. But he's definitely at the top, right? Then you look at the arms. Over 33 inches, 33.5-inch arms. You go look at the wingspan, 81 inches. We're talking about less than 3 inches under a 7-foot wingspan. So, in what Michael Hall Jr. could do at the Combine, I think he absolutely stood out to people, and I was really excited to see it because he's a player I've had probably a lot higher than most people do on their big boards, because I think there's an immense amount of upside, and clearly he's a smart player because he's already coming into the NFL with a pass rush arsenal, which you look at interior defensive linemen, It's not that often you get guys like that. And he's not even 21 years old. Keep that in mind. So I am in love with what I saw. Absolutely loved it. So definitely someone who is going to be staying where he is at least, or going up on my big board after all this. There's just a lot of really good names, I feel like, above him. It might be hard to move him up a ton, but really impressed with it. So next guy, Byron Murphy II. I feel like he came in maybe a little smaller than expected. I'll actually just go back here, look at the measurements on him. He came in 6'1.5", so just above 6 foot, which we saw Clyde Cansey make it last year. He played really well for Tampa Bay. And so it doesn't mean that he's not going to be good, because we've seen things with Byron Murphy that make him special as a player. He has that same kind of pass rush upside, but he's also got this just incredible ability to just dominate with leverage. And his size helps him with that a bit. He is a strong player, even if he came in under 300, which was 11 pounds less than what we expected. He plays really well for it. And so you can't ignore the film on it, and it's why he's still high for me. I know the arms just under 33 inches, a little bit under actually, over half an inch short. But still, I felt like watching him, getting to see the flexibility during drills, especially the one where they're running around the hoops, you can see that this guy is special in those regards. And he also dominated the 40-yard dash. Had a great time for that, 487. It's really good for what his size was. Now, of course, Braden Fisk exists, so that kind of takes away from it. But Byron Murphy Byron Murphy II, I felt like he did a pretty good job. Even if the measurables are a little off, we saw a guy work just last year that had the same kind of issues. I feel like the NFL is still going to value him a lot. He's going to go early in the draft. And probably, if I had to put my finger on where he's going to go, the absolute latest is probably 16 to Seattle, because I think they would absolutely take a player like that, especially with Mike McDonald coming in, having Justin Madubuike the year before, and all these guys on their defense. So I think they're going to focus on that side of the ball. Now we'll get to edge rushers. So some of these might be listed with linebacker. I'll have to look at that a bit. But Chop Robinson, first name stands out. Funny enough, all the hype about Chop Robinson, and I think he didn't really live up to what was expected, although he was still very impressive. He didn't have the fastest 40-yard dash. And we're going to talk about that guy right after this. But still, incredibly fast. Sub 4.5. That is really good for what he is. And you look at the 10-yard split, this is where you see the explosion. He tied Dallas Turner, so pretty similar. But you see as well, Dallas Turner, he got the faster time, a little less than Chop Robinson. These guys are pretty much identical in these regards. But Chop Robinson, as far as explosion goes, he is among the very best in the class. And I think it's probably just going to be a tie, quite frankly, with Dallas Turner, which talks about how special of a player he is. But you also look at the broad jump. He came in second here, got 10 foot, 8 inches. The point of all these things, not that the broad jump is this incredibly important statistic. The point of it is to show how explosive of a player this is. I think he did a good job, but like I said, not really meeting the expectations that I had and the amount of hype that he had going in. As far as measurements, we'll actually take a look at that really quick. I do need to remember where he did land. And he's a little bit down right now on my board, but came in actually taller than Dallas Turner. 254 pounds, so really good size in these regards, but small hands. Arm length is a little under what you'd want. The wingspan is the clear issue. And you can see I got this color code on here. Out of all these guys, he ends up having the second worst, which Gabriel Murphy, the reason why he's down here is actually because of the short arms for the most part. So that is a concern for me, because that is going to hurt him as a pass rusher. But there's still a lot to work with. Still going to be a guy that people look at as one of the top prospects in this class. I don't know if he makes it out of the first round, but I don't know how far into the first round he makes. I think he's one of those picks you see a deep playoff contender make at the end of the draft. Not sure which team exactly. I'd have to do my research, but that's probably where he's going to fall just based off of some of these special traits that he has with explosion. Now let's talk about the big winner at this position, Dallas Turner. He's obviously going to be that guy. 4.46. He was just freaking blazing fast out there. And I was a little worried at first because of the measurements. Not talking about anything except for height, though. Because you look at height, 6'2" and 6'10". I mean, it's not really what you want there, but it's not the worst in the world. I mean, you compare this with other guys. We're looking at like Jared Verse here, 6'4" basically. He's not even an inch and a half under that. Obviously, you wish he was taller. It's just not something that's going to take him way down my board. I think he makes up for it in a lot of ways because, you know, you see the weight. He got it up. He's heavier than maybe what I expected. I was worried he was going to be low 240s, but he's in that mold of a speed rusher. This is around where he's going to be. Still plays with pretty good strength, though. I mean, you can look at him. The guy is clearly strong, but big hands, nearly 10 inches. His arm length is great. He's at 34 3/8 in the wingspan, inch short of a 7-foot wingspan. One of the best in the class. Obviously, Darius Robinson, he takes it home. We knew that going into this, but you look at all these competitors. I mean, he is far and above the best in a lot of these. That's why you see a lot of green here. But he dominated everything he was doing. Ran the fastest 40 time. Look at the 10-yard split. We saw this already. Tied for the fastest time there. And then the vertical jump as well. Just to show you the explosion here. Over 40 inches. So he has a lot of these same things that Chop Robinson has, right? But he's a more refined player. He's got the pass rush arsenal. He has the production coming out of college. He has better arm length. There's so much more to work with there. And so he's going to be far above him. That's not really a shock. But right now, like Turner, I think he came into this my 7th overall prospect. He'll probably stay there just because it's really hard for me to move a quarterback below him or any of the top 3 receivers. And then you have Joe Alt. But he's probably firmly going to be there at number 7 for me. So fantastic job for him. He was definitely one of the guys who dominated the day. Now we'll get into 2 more pass rushers, and then we're going to talk about a couple linebackers and wrap this up. So a guy I felt like he didn't really blow me out of the water, but I felt like when I watched him, like he's clearly a very well-rounded player. Even for all the crap he might get about, you know, bend and all that, I feel like he did really well at everything. And that was Jared Verse. Ran a 4.58, a little faster than I expected. He stayed under the 4.6s, really like that. Fast player. He finished 2nd in the bench press among all day one performers. We can see that here. Only finished, if we go to all, you can see the highest one. Only finished behind a defensive tackle. He beat everyone else. I mean, you keep in mind that these pass rushers on the outside are going to be significantly smaller. It says a lot. I mean, you go down this list. Your next edge rusher at 26. Down here at, 10th? So, yeah. You're very impressed with what Jared Verse is as a power rusher, but I think he also showed that he has that speed element to him. And then when you watched him go through the drill with the hoops, I felt like he did a really good job bending. I think he did really well, especially for the crap he gets over that. So was he a guy who just dominated the whole thing? No. But is he someone I feel really comfortable with and think is going to be a pro-ready pass rusher, especially considering the way he carries himself off the field? Absolutely. He is going to be that for me. So really happy with what we saw from Jared Verse, even if people aren't going to talk about it a ton. You know, I don't know if they are or not. I haven't seen a lot, but just my thoughts. And you can see the time I'm recording this, by the way. We got some cornerbacks on here. I'm trying to not see all that so I can be surprised when we're done with this video. But Darius Robinson, final guy I'll talk about with the pass rushers, had really good measurables, right? We knew this. Came out of the Senior Bowl, knew what they were already. Measured again, still just freaky numbers here. I think his wingspan is either identical or larger than Trayvon Walker's. So very impressed with that. Big hands as well. I think he has the biggest hands in this entire group. So really good things there. 285. I think he needs to put on a little bit of weight if he wants to play inside. It's not a huge concern, though. You can get that done. So that would be one concern, projecting him to playing a Chris Jones-like role. Not saying he's Chris Jones, but just playing in that kind of role. That's where I want him to be. Probably want him a little bigger. But as far as like how he performed in drills, I didn't really think that he did too much to blow up the combine. And part of the problem is that he's clearly, out of this entire list, the biggest guy of all these players. He's playing at 285. I mean, we're talking about going up against guys like Turner, who are, less than 250. Chop Robinson, 254. Jared Verse, I think, was the next biggest guy. He came in at 254. Actually, he was a lot less than I thought he would be. Latu is 259. That's actually kind of surprising. Nyland, 267. I mean, he's far off from all these players I've got on my big board, right? So he wasn't going to stand out in that group, and I kind of hate that for him because it's really easy to just compare him to those guys. But still, I mean, I think where he was heading into the combine is pretty well justified. I don't think he's going to have that meteoric rise into the top 16 or the top 10 or any of that because we were talking about it for a little bit here. But I think he's probably just going to land late in the first round. I think a team like Detroit's going to go get him. That would actually probably be my guess right now with all the hype around him being a Lions fan when he was young. We saw Detroit do this with Aiden Hutchinson. And I think Darius Robinson falls to them at that point. So that's probably where I would project him. Kind of like everyone's talking about Dallas Turner being an Atlanta Falcon. It just makes sense. Something that will probably happen when you look at the needs, you look at what teams are going to go after, and you look at the players teams are going to value. So just my thoughts. Let's go linebackers. As I was recording this, I just got a pop-up on my phone, something about Clemson, so I'm assuming Nate Wiggins has just done something incredible, but we'll see that in a second. Peyton Wilson and Edgerrin Cooper are the two guys who are going to stand out here. I think they're clearly the top linebackers. For Peyton Wilson, it really just comes down to, are you okay with all the injuries? Are you okay with the arm length? Those are the primary concerns. But as far as explosion and athleticism, this guy dominated. Fastest 40 time of the day, 10-yard splits. His 154 tied for the best of all linebackers. So still really great stuff there. I feel like clearly the big thing you saw with him is that he can compete with a guy like Edgerrin Cooper as far as the speed and the explosion. But where I have him below, I have him significantly farther down because of the injuries, because of the age, all those factors. It's when you look at the size, right? I mean, 6'4" and 234 is really good. But when you go to hands, 9 inches. It's the worst, actually, of every guy I've got on here. Same here with arms, with the arm length. Just over 30 inches. Next closest guy I've got on here, 31 and a half. I mean, he's almost an inch and a half below that. And of course, the wingspan is just not going to be as good. It's funny, he's actually got a bigger wingspan than Jeremiah Trotter, despite all this. So those are the limitations with Peyton Wilson. But the things that he could control going into this, I thought he did well. And so that's where you got to give him his flowers, because he can't control his arm length. He can't control the injury history. He can't do anything about that. I think this was also someone, from what I heard, who interviewed pretty well with teams. So I like what I saw from him. Still have some really big concerns, though, that are going to limit how far up he goes on my board. So let's talk about our last guy, Edgerrin Cooper. Came in 6'2", 227, maybe a little smaller than you want for the weight. I do want to see him put on a little more. What's crazy, though, assuming I didn't just put in the wrong number here, I'm gonna guess I didn't. Jeremiah Trotter is actually the same size. Kind of crazy. Didn't like the numbers on him very much. I mean, you can see here pretty much everything is in the red. But Edgerrin Cooper, he's got big hands, even if they're not the best of all linebackers. Still a good thing. Arm length is fantastic, over 33-inch arms. And you see the wingspan over 80 inches. all really good stuff for a linebacker. You go a 40-yard dash, he's one of the fastest guys, and I think he could have gone faster. I think he felt that way as well. I think I saw something on Twitter, him talking about it, wanting to improve that number. Maybe he'll run it as pro day, get something better. I'm sure he will. We know how teams are. They basically just lie about everything. That's why every player comes in shorter than expected. Like I know this morning we saw with all the cornerbacks that they're less than 6 foot tall. Just every single year we get this. But still, Edgerrin Cooper's fast. And where he really makes up for this, he's almost a tenth slower than Wilson, right? You got a 10-yard split. He's tied with him. Tied for the best time. And it shows the explosion in the way he plays. And then if you're talking about the visual side of it, if you watched him during some of the drills, especially the one where they have him flipping their hips, running sideline to sideline, it's effortless for him. I mean, he can do it without even breaking a sweat, quite frankly. And that's all the stuff that we've talked about with him. Those are all the things that people were hyped about. It's there. You saw it at the combine. He's got good measurables. He has a ton to work with. Really, there's not a limitation here except, hey, man, just bulk up a little bit and we're going to be good to go. Because he already plays with physicality. You just got to have the size to do it. Not get injured. So I love what I saw from Edgerrin Cooper. I have him right at the fringe of the first round. He does make it into my top 32 because he is 32nd. I think he deserves to be there. I think he's probably going to stay very close to that by the end of this, but really liked what I saw. He's clearly, to me, the top linebacker in the class. So those are our guys to talk about. I am going to watch cornerbacks. I'm going to watch tight ends. And tight ends I'm probably not going to care about as much, but I'm going to see how all those guys perform today. I'll have a video out tomorrow for y'all, and we'll see who stands out. It's a really important one to watch because we've seen Jacksonville talk a ton about cornerbacks, and really everyone's on the table. We heard Doug Pearson yesterday say that the team would consider trading back in the draft again in the same manner they did last year. So really opens it up to some other players. Maybe an Ennis Rakestraw Jr. can sneak in there. So we're going to watch that. Going to see what happens. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I appreciate y'all watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the combine. And finally, go Jags.